morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're
Good,
doing
Johnny.
great. Better than the Yankees. One thing I love talking to you about, John, is because we're in the super fishbowl of New York, and because you cover everything and every team, I love getting your perspective. So Yankee fans predictably kind of freaking out a little bit about how anemic the offense has been to this point. But what's been sort of like the feeling around baseball? Are people believing that this Yankee team is one rally away from breaking out of this slump, or are people around baseball as concerned as the fans are here in New York?
Yeah, I think people around baseball still think the Yankees are an excellent team. They certainly are on paper. Maybe it's me. I'm freaking out a little bit. I'm shocked at the way they've performed. This is the worst start since 1991. I was covering the team. I was the beat writer then. They were terrible. They were a terrible team in 1991. It started 6-11, and they stayed on that course. Now I do expect them to play to their level. These guys have track records. These aren't a bunch of rookies. You would expect them to be better, but looking at that lineup, it's just brutal. They're last in baseball in batting average. They're last in OPS. Their offense is terrible. Urshela, one of the better players on the team, who's actually performed to his capability, and one of the only ones for a rare guy, and he was moved into the fourth spot yesterday by Aaron Boone, which I like that move, but then he gets hurt with a lower back strain. We'll see how long he's out, but it's pretty shocking how little they've hit, and frankly their fielding hasn't been too good, and their base running hasn't been too good, and that whole thing with Gleyber Torres yesterday, that's just embarrassing. It really is.
No, that is. John, so what's going to wake him up? You've already had Boone address the team Friday night after the loss against the Rays. Cashman came out trying to calm everybody's nerves. So you've already heard from Boone and Cashman. The players are saying all the right things for the most part after these games. What the hell's going to wake this team up?
Yeah, and I like Aaron Boone. I think he's done a great job. He's got a .600 winning percentage as the manager of the team. But sometimes you need to get a little tougher. I noticed in the press conferences, I think like almost all the managers nowadays, they support the players, which I get that. But at some point, you've got to say something. You got to not say that Gleyber Torres should have hustled a little bit more. They both basically said the same thing. I should have done a little bit better. No, that was wrong what Gleyber Torres did. He should be hustling out of the box. I don't care if he's not sure whether it's fair or foul. You got to run. If you're not sure, run. To me, Gleyber Torres should be benched for tonight. I would not play him in the next game. I know he was willing to bench Frazier and Hicks for underperformance, although they're all underperforming. But if you don't hustle, you really stand out. And Gleyber Torres did not hustle. And, I do think at some point you need to put the hammer down and do something that's going to affect him, not just say in a press conference he could have done a little bit better. No, he could have done a lot better than that.
Jon Heyman is our guest. Another friend of the show is Andy Martino, and he wrote an interesting column for SNY, John, that maybe optioning Gleyber Torres could be the message that gets sent to this team, that it's nobody's, God-given right to start a shortstop for the Yankees. Maybe he could work some things out down in Scranton. Do you think the Yankees would be reticent to do something that drastic?
Well, they haven't even benched him yet for one game. So I do think they'd be reluctant to do that. Does not sound like them. And it's pretty amazing how far he's fallen. I can remember on MLB Network, not that long ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we were all given the question, who would you rather start your team with, Gleyber Torres or Juan Soto? That question seems funny today. I actually thought about it. I did say Juan Soto because I just thought Juan Soto was the best hitter in the National League and one of the two best hitters in baseball. And I understand one's an outfielder, one's an infielder, but, I thought I'll go with Soto, but I did have to think about it at this point. I'm not sure what happened to Gleyber Torres, but, it's obviously not hustling is terrible, but he has not been good on either side of the ball. He has fielded that position a little bit better lately, which is somewhat encouraging, but, I'll be surprised if they option him. I will not be surprised if they bench him. They should bench him.
Speaking of embarrassing, the Mets last night in Chicago, that was an embarrassing performance against the Cubs as they get absolutely hammered by Chicago. really, and the headline coming out of it is going to be the defense and J.D. Davis defensively at third base, John. I know Rojas, talking about him still being their third baseman, talking about improvement from, 6 to 12 to 18 months ago at the position. How patient are the Mets going to be here with Davis at third with these miscues that we've seen here quite consistently early on in the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting calculation. He's balancing it with very good offense right now. And you can, almost live with the defense if he can hit like that. But, at some point you go into a slump offensively. Defensively, you are where you are until you improve. And, he's obviously working hard. But, he's, at this point, a liability in the field. And, he's the third baseman until they say otherwise. Until then, he will be supported. Rojas is like almost all the other managers in baseball nowadays. When I started covering, eons ago, it wasn't like that. The manager would tell you really what's going on in some cases or many cases. And now everybody's supported and everybody's fantastic until they're absolutely benched. Just look at Mattingly, who's old school, just turned 60, as I did. He was asked about Anthony Bass as their closer. He's fine. He's good. He's doing great. And he blew 2 games, and he's not the closer anymore. You're not going to hear the straight story from any of the managers until it actually happens. And look at Mattingly's case; he did the right thing. He took him out of the closer, put in Yimi Garcia. Yimi Garcia has the stomach to close, apparently, and he made the switch. Now it's a little more complicated with Gleyber Torres. He's got to be a starting player at some point. Even if you bench him for a little while. He's a very good talent, and so it's a little bit different. But I don't necessarily look too closely what the manager says. I look what he does, not what he says.
Yeah, and John, the same thing with the general managers. And if we keep it with the Mets for a moment, Sandy Alderson can say that they care about defense, but look at what's happening. Last night's obviously the extreme example where you have 4 errors, but you have multiple players who are out of position. And it's great that you had Francisco Lindor. He's an upgrade defensively, even though he had an error last night. But he's an upgrade defensively in your infield. You're a team that's been built around pitching, and the defense is this bad. How much should Sandy be wearing these defensive miscues that the Mets keep having? They are a bad defensive team.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a little bit of an asterisk because they missed 7 games so far. They were postponed 7 times due to weather, due to COVID. They get a little bit more of an excuse. The Yankees have no excuse at this point. They're just playing bad. The Mets have been okay, but it was a little bit of a handicap to miss the first several games and several since then. And the weather is atrocious. I don't have to tell you, I went to school in Chicago, and to know that the weather is ridiculous in Chicago. It's, April 22nd and 39 degrees. I didn't perform too well in my winter quarter. I didn't go to any of my classes. It was too cold. So, I get it. That's how I did.
No show Heyman, that's what they call you.
That's my excuse for getting the D in American history in 1980.
There'll be a quiz after the interview.
Oh, boy. No, I wasn't even good when I was taking the class, allegedly. It's tough. It's cold there. It's an adjustment. Maybe it'll be better when they get out. They obviously upgraded defensively. That said, they were atrocious last year, but they have a better defensive catcher by far in McCann. Obviously, Lindor is one of the best shortstops in baseball. So it's hard to realize exactly how bad they were last year, that they upgraded terrifically at 2 positions, and they're still not great. The DH would have helped them. It's odd to say that. It sounds like an oxymoron. It seems weird to say that they needed the DH to improve defensively. But, if they'd signed a better center fielder, they would have moved Nimmo to left. Nimmo would be excellent in left. J.D. Davis would be excellent at first. And obviously Alonso can hit. As we saw him park one onto Waveland Avenue, even in that route. But right now they have a below average first baseman, a below average left fielder. And, Nimmo, the metrics tell us he's below average. It's not as obvious to me, but I can accept that. Third base obviously is an issue defensively. And he's going to be replaced at the end of the games that they lead because of that. But, it's a tough call. It's a balance because J.D. Davis, he can hit. He's got to work on the defense and hope that he can get close to average. Right now, he's not there.
No, he's not. And John, the frustrating thing with the Mets is their staff, their starting rotation's the greatest strength, and they're not only going to get better. They're going to get Carrasco back. Yep. They're going to get Syndergaard back at some point in time this year. Stroman's been brilliant his first 3 starts. We know how great Jacob deGrom is, best pitcher in all of Major League Baseball. So, I know the old balance of, defense, offense, Sandy saying if you can't hit, you can't play. But, you also have to support the greatest strength on your team, which is that starting rotation, and you don't want to be giving away outs consistently if you're a team, especially when you look at the strength of this team being that rotation.
Yeah, I would say at this point, you're going to have to live with Dom Smith in left field. We know he's an excellent hitter. Alonso at first base, same thing. You're going to have to live with them. They're both starting players. I don't see them as backups. Nimmo obviously has been their best hitter. He will be in the lineup, whether it's in center or left, one way or another. The only question at this point would be third base. Does J.D. Davis hang on when he's a great hitter and at this point, fair to say, a poor fielder? You've got Guillorme as an option there. You've got DeViar as an option there. That is clearly a question. But other than that, the way the roster is constructed, I don't see a way out at first base or left field. I think you'll have to live with the defense there. I think you probably can. Dom Smith and Alonso are working hard. I don't think they're going to cost you a lot of games, or certainly more defensively than they'll get you offensively. So, I think there's not that much they can do about it. If they had the DH and been able to sign Jackie Bradley, the situation would have been solved. But, you can live with an average or below average defense. Look, those teams in the 70s, the Dodgers, they had the great pitching and they had poor defense, and they lived with it. They were not great defenders. As much as we love that infield of, say, Russell, Lopes, and Garvey, they were all hitters. They weren't great defenders. And they made up for it with their bats and the fact that they had very good pitching, as the Dodgers almost always do. You can live with a below-average defense, believe it or not, even with good pitching. I know they're supposed to go hand in hand, and they often do, but look, DeGrom strikes out a lot of guys. Stroman has been brilliant, as you mentioned. They're still doing okay, even with their defense, and it'll get better, as you also mentioned. Once they get Carrasco and Thor back, they may, aside from the Dodgers, they might have the best pitching in baseball with Carrasco and Thor added. And I know Peterson had a rough inning or two last night, but I think he's pretty good as well. So. I think that you can be a good team with very good hitting, which they should have. Once it gets warmer, they think they will, and very good starting pitching and so-so defense. You can live with it.
Jon Heyman, our guest, just a couple more minutes with you, John. And last one for me, actually, is just going back to the Yankees and talking about their pitching. So Kluber, again, 4 2/3. You got Herman tonight, who's coming off of 2 bad starts, had to get optioned down. Now he's going to be back when they're in Cleveland this evening. But Moose and I were talking about this earlier in the week about Max Scherzer and how potentially available he could be at the trade deadline since he's in the last year of his contract. If the Yankees pitching, which you can't even necessarily say is a problem at this point, it's not a problem. The problem is they're not hitting. But would the Yankees, do you think, be looking for pitching if Kluber or Herman, can't find what I think the Yankees were hoping they were going to find this year?
After the year, certainly. I think everybody will be looking at Max Scherzer. He's not lost a beat. He's been amazing. The lineup of starting pitchers who are free agents is pretty good. I don't see Kershaw going anywhere, but he'd be nice as well. He's doing well. Scherzer's been fantastic. I don't see them trading him. Although the Mets have had a lot of difficulties, and I guess you never know. But I think they'll hold on to him. He's that good of a player, and then hope to re-sign him. But I certainly would target Scherzer, and there's some other guys to target after the year. At this point, you're right. The hitting is the problem, and they need to hit better. Their pitching has not been that bad. When you sign these guys, the pitchers for 1-year deals, usually often it's a crapshoot. Kluber has just not been able to go a distance. His pitching has been okay while he's in there, but he hasn't lasted through 5 at this point. And that's what happens when you sign a 1-year deal on a guy who didn't pitch much last year. Or look at Paxton. I mean, now he's out for the year.
Yep.
Seattle gave him a big deal. That didn't work. I would say a lot of them don't work. When you sign a pitcher for a 1-year deal, especially if they're older. The one that did was Rodon, who threw a no-hitter. And, I think it's a little bit of luck involved. And a lot of people were looking at Kluber. The Yankees were not the only team. Boston and Toronto and some others. But it did seem like a lot of money, $11 million for someone who threw 1 inning last year. And at some point we will question it. And Tyone has not been exactly gangbusters either. So, but the focus needs to be on the hitting and understanding why Stanton, Judge, Gleyber, Sanchez, you go up and down that list, they're all underperforming. I think LeMahieu's numbers look okay, but he hasn't been great either, to be frank about it. I don't know. He's gotten a few bloopers in there, I guess, but none of them are hitting.
Jon, always a pleasure. Great chatting with you. We appreciate the time here on this Thursday.
All right. Great talking to you guys as always.